Now, we all know the value of asking good questions. A very, very good friend, Mike Hancock from Rock Your Life, said the quality of your questions determines the quality of your life. Now, he may have been paraphrasing someone else. Apologies to whoever that person was. But he's right. And I've started using 3 particular questions that have made all the difference. The first one you ask just as soon as you get in to see a regular client. Now, before we get going, is there anything we need to put on the table that hasn't worked well between the last time and this time? If there's a problem, don't let it sit unresolved. We shy away from this, but in point of fact, the sooner you can find that problem and deal with it, the less of a problem it is. It has not had time to grow. If an example suits, there was one client where the representative went in and said, well, is there anything we need to put on the table that's gone wrong that we need to fix? And the gentleman who he was talking to said, we've had a sexual harassment charge against one of your delivery people. Now that's not a small thing. Let's be candid about that. But what had happened was, this was an English chap, and as part of his vocabulary, he went, hello love, you alright then? How you doing, darling? And it wasn't that he meant offence, it was just his languaging. And he'd done it with this particular lady many, many, many times over months and months and months. But on this particular day, she took offence and went up and laid a complaint. Now, further investigation found that in fact she just had an absolute rocket and she was kind of looking for a fight, and this person was the next person to walk in and go, hello darling, how you doing? Don't you darling me. Now the truckie was, oh, sorry about that, and didn't think anything more of it. Had the rep not asked, what would the impact be for that company for future deliveries and future business as that got to snowball out of hand to the HR department, to the general manager? What was stopped? By asking that simple question. Now, is there anything we need to discuss right now before we go any further that hasn't worked properly? Deal with those little problems, get them out of the way, then have a very positive appointment from that point on. The second question that I've started using is what I call the Columbo question, named for Peter Falk's character from the TV program Columbo. As a detective, he would ask questions, interview people, and then as he turned to leave, just as he was going out the door, he would look back and he'd say, by the way, one more question. And he'd hit them with the key question. What I've found happens is the person you're talking to tends to be relaxed at that stage. The appointment's over, it's time to get on to the next thing, and kind of the guard goes down a little. This isn't to be sneaky or anything, it's just the way humans are. And so at that point you can ask a question that you might not normally ask and get quite an insightful answer. So listen, just before I go, whose cheese do you buy at the moment? And how much do you pay? Oh, you get the answer. Oh, just before I go, I noticed you didn't have a mat at your back door. Would you like us to try one there? I'm sure, why not? Oh, just before I go, I didn't ask you about, can we discuss that next time? Yes, by all means. Okay. Oh, just before I go, did you have someone new in the purchasing department? Yeah, we've got a young guy who's just started. Oh, maybe I can catch up with him. That last Columbo type question gives you a chance to make a sale, find out a bit of information, anything you want. But it is a great time to pop one last question in. You'd be amazed what comes up. And our third question that we use now is what we call a catch-all question. In other words, at the very end of an appointment, especially with a new client, I will often ask, now, is there anything we haven't discussed that you think is important that we should? Perhaps 9 times out of 10 the answer is, no, we're pretty good. No, we've covered it all. But on that 10th time, you will come up with something that you completely missed because you can't be a mind reader. You can't know all the politics of an organisation. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. A couple of examples. I've done some work in the audiology area. And there was one company I was approaching and chatting to, and I just happened to say to the general manager, now is there anything else that would make a difference to what we're doing that we should be talking about? He said, I probably should let you know we're actually entertaining the possible purchase by another company. Ah, will that make a difference? The largest contract I've ever had was with a large firm, And as I was walking out the door, I said, is there anything that we should discuss that would make a difference? Anything I've missed? And the divisional manager that I was dealing with said, oh yeah, and this was about January. He said, by the end of March, we'll all be gone. We're moving on. There's going to be a whole new management team in here. Now, I'd spent over a year trying to get that contract signed, and we were just at the point of signing. What difference would it make if I'd gone back in April to find a whole new management team? So obviously, I started to say, well, do you know who's replacing you? Yes, I do. Well, could they be at our next meeting so we can have a nice smooth handover so they can see what we've achieved so far and why we're doing what we're doing? That would make sense. We got that contract signed. 3 little questions that can make a big difference to your business.